Bullies have no idea. The girl they're picking on is about to destroy their lives for good. Sarah sat quietly in the back of the school bus, her eyes fixed on her notebook as she tried to ignore the snickering from the seats behind her. The bus ride to Rosewood Academy for Girls had become a daily ordeal, one that she endured with silent determination. Her best friend Emma sat beside her, occasionally glancing back with concern at the three girls who seemed to take pleasure in making their lives miserable. Behind them, Victoria commanded attention like a queen holding court. Her perfectly styled hair and designer uniform marked her as royalty in the social hierarchy of their prestigious school. Her father's influence reached every corner of the institution, ensuring that Victoria never faced consequences for her actions. Beside her sat Sophia, her loyal lieutenant who hung on every word, and behind them, Amara, the third member of their exclusive circle who often seemed uncomfortable with their behavior but never spoke up. "Look at the little mouse," Victoria whispered just loud enough for Sarah to hear. "Still scribbling in that pathetic diary of yours?" Her voice carried the particular cruelty that only teenage girls could perfect, designed to cut deep while maintaining plausible deniability. Sarah's hand tightened around her pen, but she refused to give Victoria the satisfaction of a reaction. She had learned early in her time at Rosewood that fighting back only made things worse. The school's administration seemed blind to Victoria's behavior, or perhaps they simply chose to look the other way, given her family's substantial donations to the school. The bus lurched as it pulled into the next stop, and Victoria suddenly stood up, deliberately spilling her coffee across Emma's pristine white uniform. The hot liquid soaked through the fabric, staining it brown and leaving Emma gasping from the shock. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Victoria said with mock sincerity, her voice dripping with false concern. "How clumsy of me." She used the distraction to slip off the bus unnoticed, meeting her secret boyfriend Marcus at the coffee shop across the street. Their relationship was forbidden by her conservative family, making these stolen moments both thrilling and dangerous. At school, Emma desperately tried to clean the stain from her uniform, but the damage was done. It wasn't the first time Victoria had targeted her, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. The bathroom mirror reflected her frustrated expression as she scrubbed at the stubborn mark, knowing that her mother would be furious about the ruined uniform. Meanwhile, Victoria had changed into more casual clothes in the coffee shop's restroom, her heart racing with excitement and nervousness. This was her first time meeting Marcus in person after months of chatting on social media. She had carefully constructed this elaborate deception, using her friend's absence from school as cover for her own truancy. Back at Rosewood Academy, their literature teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, introduced a new student to the class. Isabella walked in with confidence that immediately set her apart from the other girls. Her unique style and fearless attitude created ripples of curiosity throughout the classroom. She seemed immune to the social pressures that governed the rest of them, a quality that both intrigued and threatened the established order. During lunch, Sarah sat with Emma in their usual corner, both of them acutely aware of the glances and whispers from other students. The social isolation was perhaps worse than the direct bullying, creating an atmosphere where they felt constantly under scrutiny. Emma picked at her food, still upset about the morning's incident, while Sarah tried to offer comfort despite her own growing frustration. That evening, Sarah called her boyfriend Michael, seeking solace in their budding relationship. They had been together for only a few weeks, but his presence in her life provided a rare source of happiness. However, when he jokingly called her a nerd during their conversation, the word struck her like a physical blow. It was the same term Victoria used to torment her daily, and hearing it from someone she cared about felt like a betrayal. The next day brought new humiliations. During basketball practice, Victoria deliberately targeted Sarah with aggressive plays, using the sport as cover for her cruelty. When the coach insisted Victoria pass the ball to her teammate, she instead threw it directly at Sarah's face, claiming it was an accident. The coach's mild reprimand meant nothing to Victoria, who knew her father's influence would protect her from any real consequences. In the locker room afterward, tensions escalated further. Victoria accused Sarah of inappropriate behavior, a false allegation that sent shockwaves through the group of changing students. Isabella witnessed the entire incident and knew Victoria was lying, but she remained silent, unwilling to involve herself in the drama. The accusation was serious enough to warrant investigation, but Victoria's manipulative skills turned the situation to her advantage. Sarah felt the walls closing in around her. The false accusation had given Victoria new ammunition, and she used it ruthlessly. Other students began to look at Sarah with suspicion and disgust, believing Victoria's convincing performance. The isolation became complete, with even some teachers treating her differently based on the unsubstantiated claims. Unable to bear the injustice any longer, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She had overheard Victoria planning another unauthorized meeting with Marcus, and she saw an opportunity for revenge. Sarah went directly to the principal's office and reported Victoria's truancy, providing specific details about her pattern of skipping classes. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, was forced to take action when presented with concrete evidence of Victoria's behavior. She called Victoria to her office and confronted her about the skipping allegations. However, even faced with clear evidence, Victoria received only a warning. The principal's explanation was transparent in its corruption. They couldn't afford to anger Victoria's influential father, who had too much power over the school's board. Victoria's crew quickly realized that someone had betrayed their leader. They pressured maintenance staff and other students, using intimidation tactics to uncover the identity of the informant. When they discovered it was Sarah, their rage was immediate and terrifying. They cornered her behind the school building, away from cameras and witnesses. The attack was swift and brutal. Victoria and her followers surrounded Sarah, taking turns pushing and hitting her while she pleaded for mercy. The violence escalated until Victoria grabbed Sarah's head and slammed it against the concrete wall, causing her to lose consciousness. The girls fled the scene, leaving Sarah bleeding and motionless on the ground. Isabella found Sarah's unconscious form minutes later and immediately called for help. The ambulance arrived quickly, but the damage was done. Sarah was rushed to the hospital with a serious head injury, while her attackers had vanished without a trace. The aftermath of the assault would test everyone's moral compass and reveal the true nature of those involved. When police arrived at the school to investigate, Victoria and her friends presented a united front of denial. They claimed complete ignorance of the incident, even going so far as to suggest that Sarah had fabricated the entire situation for attention. Their performance was convincing enough to create doubt, especially given their families' reputations and influence within the community. Isabella faced her own moral crisis during the police questioning. She had witnessed the attack, but found herself terrified of Victoria's threats. Sophia had cornered her after the incident, making it clear that speaking out would result in serious consequences. The pressure was intense, and Isabella's silence became another victory for the bullies. Days later, when Sarah finally regained consciousness, the school held an assembly to address the incident. Sarah was asked to identify her attackers, but the trauma had left her memory fragmented and her confidence shattered. Standing before the entire student body, she found herself unable to speak clearly, her voice barely above a whisper as she claimed not to remember the details. Victoria seized this moment of vulnerability to turn the narrative in her favor. She stood up during the assembly and admitted to pushing Sarah, but claimed it was in self-defense after Sarah had touched her inappropriately. The false accusation from the locker room was now being used as justification for the violence, and Victoria's friends backed up her story with rehearsed testimonies. The school officials, already predisposed to believe Victoria due to her family's influence, accepted her version of events. Sarah was painted as the aggressor and pervert, while Victoria was portrayed as an innocent victim defending herself. The injustice was complete when Sarah received a 2-week suspension while Victoria walked away with another meaningless warning. The betrayal extended to Sarah's own family. Her mother, influenced by the school's official stance and community gossip, began to question her daughter's character. The woman who should have been Sarah's strongest advocate instead became another source of pain and isolation. Sarah's world crumbled completely as she realized that no one believed her, and no one would fight for her. During her suspension, Sarah was required to attend therapy sessions, but she spent the time obsessing over Victoria rather than healing. The therapist noted her fixation, but misinterpreted it as progress when her anger seemed to subside. In reality, Sarah was planning her revenge, channeling her pain into cold, calculated determination to destroy those who had wronged her. Emma's betrayal cut deepest of all. When Sarah returned to school, she discovered that her former best friend had learned about her secret relationship with Michael and felt hurt by the deception. Combined with Emma's absence during the locker room incident, she had begun to believe Victoria's lies about Sarah's character. The loss of her closest ally left Sarah completely isolated and fueled her desire for vengeance. The first phase of Sarah's revenge began with a simple fire alarm. While the school evacuated, she stole Victoria's phone and accessed her social media accounts. She then broadcast a recording of Victoria and her friends mocking Ms. Rodriguez over the school's intercom system, ensuring that their cruel comments reached every student and teacher in the building. The consequences were swift and satisfying. Victoria, Sophia, and Amara found themselves in Ms. Rodriguez's office, unable to talk their way out of the evidence. Their punishment included janitorial duties and a ban from all sports activities, effectively ending their chances of making the prestigious soccer team they had been counting on. Watching them clean toilets in janitor uniforms while other students laughed was the first taste of justice Sarah had experienced. Isabella approached Sarah after the incident, revealing that she knew about the prank and warning her to be careful. This interaction led to an unexpected revelation about Isabella's past. She had been expelled from her previous school for hacking into their computer system and stealing exam questions. Her technical skills and outsider status made her a potential ally in Sarah's war against the bullies. The anti-bullying assembly that followed provided another opportunity for humiliation. When Ms. Rodriguez selected Victoria to participate as a victim in the demonstration, Isabella volunteered to play the bully. Her performance was so convincing and cutting that Victoria was left speechless and embarrassed in front of the entire school. The tables had turned, and Victoria's invincibility began to show cracks. Despite the principal's interference in allowing the bullies to try out for the soccer team, Sarah's athletic abilities shone through. She was selected for the team, while Victoria was rejected, a decision that sent shockwaves through the school's social hierarchy. The coach's explanation that attitude mattered as much as skill was a direct rebuke to Victoria's entitled behavior. Victoria's retaliation was swift and personal. She stole Sarah's private journal and scattered the pages throughout the school, exposing her deepest thoughts and struggles with mental health. The intimate details of Sarah's therapy sessions and emotional turmoil became public entertainment, causing a complete breakdown of her remaining dignity. The journal incident pushed Sarah to her breaking point. She considered transferring schools, willing to abandon her revenge if it meant escaping the constant humiliation. But Isabella and Emma, who had begun to see the truth about Victoria's character, convinced her to stay and fight. They revealed that Victoria and Sophia were planning to sneak out during the upcoming school trip, providing the perfect opportunity for the next phase of their revenge. Meanwhile, the consequences of Sarah's previous actions were becoming apparent. Amara, who had been caught in the crossfire of the fake boyfriend scheme, was struggling with the aftermath. Her conservative family's reaction to the compromising photos had been severe, and she was withdrawn from school in disgrace. The girl who had once been part of the popular crowd was now a pariah, her reputation destroyed by a single manipulated image. The school trip to the mountain resort provided the stage for the final act of Sarah's revenge. She had carefully orchestrated Isabella's room assignment to keep surveillance on Victoria and Sophia, despite Isabella's reservations about the increasingly dangerous nature of their schemes. The tension between the allies was growing as the moral implications of their actions became clearer. At the resort, an unexpected incident occurred that complicated Sarah's plans. When an older man harassed Isabella at the spa, Victoria immediately came to her defense, showing a side of her personality that contradicted her usual cruelty. This act of genuine kindness caused Isabella to question their revenge plot and consider the possibility that Victoria wasn't entirely evil. The complexity of human nature became apparent as the trip continued. Victoria's protection of Isabella and her genuine concern for her safety created moral ambiguity that made the revenge plot less satisfying. Isabella began to advocate for a different approach, suggesting they confront Victoria directly rather than continue their destructive schemes. Sarah's response to Isabella's change of heart was harsh and revealing. She expelled Isabella from their group, determined to complete her revenge alone. The isolation that had once been forced upon her was now self-imposed as she pushed away anyone who questioned her methods. The bullied had become the bully, perpetuating the cycle of hurt and revenge. The nightclub incident that followed was a masterclass in manipulation and moral compromise. Sarah's tip to the teachers about the missing students put everyone at risk, including Isabella, who had reluctantly joined Victoria's group. The consequences of this betrayal extended far beyond their immediate circle, affecting innocent parties and creating new victims. Sophia bore the brunt of the club incident's consequences. Her abusive home life meant that being caught out at night resulted in physical violence from her alcoholic father. The bruises she wore to school were a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of their teenage drama. Yet Sarah felt no remorse, viewing Sophia's suffering as justified payback for years of torment. The final phase of Sarah's revenge targeted Victoria directly, using her secret relationship as a weapon. Sarah had gathered detailed information about Victoria's boyfriend Marcus, including his address and daily routine. When Victoria planned another secret meeting, Sarah saw her opportunity to destroy her enemy completely. The complexity of Victoria's home life became apparent as the plan unfolded. Her older brother Hassan's controlling behavior and violent tendencies were well known within the family, but his authority was unquestioned. Victoria's relationship with Marcus wasn't just forbidden, it was genuinely dangerous, given her family's extreme conservative values and Hassan's explosive temper. Sarah's decision to expose Victoria's location to Hassan was the point of no return. Despite pleas from Isabella, Emma, and even Sophia to reconsider, Sarah sent the information that would put Victoria in mortal danger. The revenge that had begun with pranks and embarrassment had escalated to potentially deadly consequences. The confrontation at Marcus's apartment was swift and terrifying. Hassan's discovery of his sister's relationship triggered a rage that went beyond normal family discipline. The gun he had been carrying in his car earlier became a tool of potential murder as he pointed it at Victoria, who could only beg for her life while he decided her fate. The revelation that Marcus was actually Principal Henderson's son added another layer of complexity to the situation. The corruption and favoritism that had protected Victoria throughout her school career was partly motivated by the principal's desire to shield her own family from scandal. The web of relationships and hidden connections that governed their world was more intricate than anyone had realized. In the aftermath of her successful revenge, Sarah walked through the school halls with a sense of complete satisfaction. She had systematically destroyed each of her tormentors, using their own weapons against them. The psychological manipulation, social isolation, and reputation destruction that had once been inflicted upon her were now tools in her arsenal. The sight of Sophia crying in the hallway meant nothing to Sarah now. The girl who had once been desperate for friendship and acceptance had been transformed into something cold and calculating. The bullies had created a monster, and that monster had proven more ruthless than they had ever been. The cycle of revenge had reached its conclusion, but the true cost was only beginning to be understood. Sarah's victory was complete, but it had come at the expense of her own humanity. The quiet, timid girl who had once sought only acceptance had become something she would not have recognized, proving that sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease. The school hallways that had once echoed with Sarah's suffering now bore witness to her triumph. But in winning her war against the bullies, she had lost something far more valuable: her innocence, her compassion, and her ability to see beyond the darkness that had consumed her world. The revenge was complete, but the real tragedy was just beginning.